Welcome to Computer Science 1. If anybody is not here for Computer Science 1, if you were sitting in the incorrect classroom, I apologize, you've been sitting here 10 minutes to find this out. And let me just tell you, now is the time to leave. No point in being embarrassed and sitting here in silence for an hour like I did once when I went to the wrong classroom. It was really embarrassing. I was teaching, and I just sat there quietly for an hour. So don't do that. If you are not already registered in the class, and you are trying to add into the class, you need to send me an email. That's my email address, clay@cs.georgetown.edu. Sadly, this class is very full. It looks like there are seats in here. However, there's another section of this class that has like 75 people in it. And we are limited not by the number of seats, but by the number of TAs that we have. Because we will have a lot of TAs to help you with this and help you with grading. So if you are not in the class already and not already registered, please send me email. There's like 30 people on the wait list I'm keeping, even though it doesn't show up on the registers. So it's going to be difficult to get in. I'm really sorry. We had huge demand for this class that I wasn't expecting. All right, everybody. I'm Clay, and I am a computer geek.
Hi.
Really? All right, we can do better than that. Hi, everybody. I'm Clay, and I am a computer geek.
Hi, Clay.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here today. My official title is Professor, which is big and fancy. However, my whole life, I have been called Clay. My mom called me Clay, my dad called me Clay. My kids call me Daddy, but that would not be appropriate for any of you. So you can just go ahead and call me Clay. All right? Everybody good with that? If you decide to call me Professor, I'm going to assume that we're on some sort of formal basis, and I will just call you student. Sound fair? I'm okay doing that. Doesn't bother me. One thing you do need to know about me. I used to be, quite a long time ago, in the Army. So here's when I was in the Army. You can tell I was much younger then. And this means a couple of things as far as this class is concerned. First is, I listened to a lot of machine gun fire. And I don't know if anybody's ever heard machine gun fire, but it is very loud. I did bad things to my hearing, really bad things. So if I'm in this class and I'm talking and you have a question, and I hope you'll have questions, and I hope that occasionally you will ask them in class, what's going to happen is sometimes I'm going to go, what? What? I'm sorry, what? Particularly in the winter when the heat turns on and there's stuff blowing, I won't be able to hear you. And it's not you just have to yell at me. I'm used to it. It happens all the time. So if I'm going, what? It's not you. It's me. In particular, it's my really bad hearing. Okay? So I encourage you, if I'm saying that, to say what. The other thing that happened in the Army is I learned to yell very well. So if you can ever not hear me, I'm willing to yell louder, or I can just turn the microphone up since we're using that this semester. I assume everybody can hear me. Is it too loud? No? All right. The other thing that I learned while I was in the Army is that if you are ever feeling down, if you are unmotivated, I am willing to yell at you really loudly to try and increase your motivation level. Okay? In my entire academic career, I've had one person take me up on this, and it didn't really work. So, it was fun, though. They were in my office, and I just yelled at them for a minute and a half. And then they left, and everybody in the hall was like, what was that? So it's actually pretty fun for me. All right. The other thing about this class is I've been teaching this class, or TAing it, for a very long time. The first time I taught or TA'd this class was in 1993. Okay, so that's 8, 9 something years? Okay. All right. How many of y'all were not born in 1993? Anybody? Yeah. All right. So before we get started, there's something I have to tell you. And I'm not going to lie to you. I have to be honest to you about this. In fact, I'm not going to lie to you about this, but I'm going to lie to you about a lot of things later. Okay? This is a hard class. Let me say that again for emphasis. This is a hard class. Now, you might be wondering why it's a hard class. And here's why. It is not that the material is incredibly difficult. In fact, every one of you in here can learn the material. Every single one of you has the ability to do it. Don't have to be a rocket scientist. The problem is that there is just so much material to learn. Okay? And the reason is, I kind of believe that people learn by accretion. If I'm teaching you something new, I try really hard to relate it to something you already know. And if you can relate it to something you already know, it's easier to remember it, and it's easier to learn. The problem with most people in computer science is that it's something they haven't done before. And there's not a lot of things to attach new knowledge to. So we have to start from scratch, okay? Let me give you an example. How many of you in here have ever written a paper? Show of hands. Okay. So most of you have written a paper. So if you were to take a class, let's say you were going to go and take a history class, and you walked into history and they said, write a paper, you would know what to do, right? You know physically how to write a paper. What do? Well, you choose a topic, you go to the library or wherever online and do some research, you create your outline, you write a draft, then maybe, depending on what's going on, you get some feedback on your draft, do revisions on it, and then when you're done, you're complete, and you submit your paper, right? So you already know how to write a paper, and writing a paper on a new topic isn't that much additional work, right? Say somebody gave you a new topic you didn't know about. You already know the tools you need to use to write the paper, right? It's pretty easy. You have to go to research, so you look stuff up on Wikipedia, you fire up Microsoft Word, type some stuff in, bingo, you're done. It's pretty easy. Well, this class is not like that. This class is different than that because you generally don't have the knowledge of the tools you need. And while you're learning, you have to learn the tools as well. Let me give you an analogy. Does anybody know what that is? Yes, sir.
Is that, it's called Devil's Wall, I think? Is that correct?
I've never heard that called that before.
Alright, there's like something in...
All right, I will just tell you, I'm just curious because out of all the times I've used this example, one person actually knew it once, and I was like, oh my gosh, horribly surprised. This is actually called a quipu. A quipu. And a quipu is essentially what the ancient Incans used to communicate. They did not have writing. But what they did have was llamas. And so they would take the llama hair and they would braid it into string. And they would put one across and then dangle the other strings down. And then they would tie knots on each one of the strings in different positions and different kinds of knots. And then they would take this whole bundle of rope and they would carry it across the mountains to someone else who would lay it all out and would interpret where all the knots were. Okay? Does that make sense? So let's say that you wanted to write a paper about a quipu. Could you do it? Yeah, I just told you the search term. You go look it up, you go to the library, talk to the librarian, you find the history of the quipu, and you would write about it. Let me ask you, how many of you think could write something on a quipu or using a quipu? Pretty much nobody, right? And that's just because you don't have the skill set for that. Here's what you have to do. You have to learn how to harvest llama hair, which of course involves dealing with llamas. You have to take their hair and learn to braid ropes. You have to tie various knots. You have to put the knots in the right place for a message so someone else will understand it. You have to do this in Incan, the way they will understand it, and you have to walk long distances over the high mountains to deliver it. Most of us do not have that skill set, right? Unless somebody's holding out on us, all right? So, in learning this stuff, you have different things you need to learn. You need to learn the tools, right? You do need to learn the tools. So in our quipu analogy, you have to learn all the llama hair stuff. You have to learn the syntax. The syntax are the units of communication that you can use to communicate. They are the little pieces that you can put together that have some meaning. Right? And then finally, the other thing you have to learn is you have to learn the semantics. And the semantics are how you take all of the pieces of syntax that you learned and put them together into a single message. Now, why am I telling you all this? Remember back when I said it was a hard class? It's a hard class. It's a hard class because you don't have any tools to work with. You have to learn those. You don't know the syntax. You have to learn that. And you have to learn how to put the pieces, use the tools and the syntax to create things that are semantically correct. It's a lot of stuff. So let's talk about what we are going to learn in this class. The first thing we're going to cover is how computers work. Okay? Not in detail. I'm not going to require you to draw up circuit diagrams or anything like that. But in order to understand what the computer can do for you, you have to understand at least the very basic operation of a computer. Because when you're programming, the program you build is tied into that. This part's pretty easy. I'm just trying to show you there's a lot of it. You have to learn how to work with the editor. The editor is the program that you would use to create your code. You cannot use the tools that you're familiar with. You cannot. And it's not that I'm prohibiting you from doing it. It's because if you use something like Microsoft Word or WordPad or stuff like that, there is invisible formatting going on behind the scenes. And this formatting that you cannot see will give you problems. And it invokes this, it's like ghost problems. You're like, it looks right. So we have to learn a new editor. You have to learn how to work with the compiler. Computer code that you write is not understood natively by the computer. There is a program called a compiler that takes the code that you write and turns it into a program that the computer can run. Right? Now, here's one thing about the compiler. It is an incredibly rude piece of software. Anybody speak a little bit of French? Not a lot? Anybody speak a lot of French? Okay. Those of you who speak a little bit of French, have you ever visited Paris? And were people happy when you spoke to them in French, or were they rude to you? The compiler is like being able to speak a little bit of French in Paris. Okay? It doesn't give you any credit for trying. It just gives you badness for being wrong. Okay? So when you're typing your program, you'll run the compiler and you'll miss a semicolon, you'll have one parentheses, and what it will do is it will spew this giant list of stuff at you, and you'll go, oh my God, I'm a horrible person. I didn't get it right. And really, when you fix one little mistake, it's going to be fine. Okay? So the compiler is written for technical people and has technical output, and it is very scary, but it's okay. All right? I'll just tell you that right up front. I still occasionally just get the compiler spewing huge amounts of stuff at me, and I'm like, I must have done something horribly wrong, and then I missed like a curly brace somewhere. The other thing is when you write your program, you're going to get it wrong. Everybody does. So you're going to have to learn how to debug your program. This is weird, right? Like if you write a paper, the Microsoft Word doesn't yell at you if you get something wrong in your paper, does it? It just lets you do what you want. So imagine Microsoft Word, every time like that little green syntax thing came up, popped up in a big box and said, you're an idiot! And you're like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. And then you had to figure out, and it doesn't tell you like what mistake it made, just that you're an idiot. That's kind of the experience you will have working with a compiler, sadly. I wish there was like a Nerf compiler we could use, but there's not. Then you have to learn all of the C++ language structures. These are going to be the little pieces of the syntactic pieces that you can use to build a program. And there are many of these, many. You'll learn these throughout the semester. And you're going to do this while writing the equivalent of 5 papers, except instead of papers, they are actually really, that's not going to change automatically, programs. So it's as if you're learning new tools to write a language. You're learning the semantic pieces and you're trying to write stories in that language all at the same time. Now, how many of you are scared so far? Good. I'm glad you're honest because it's going to be fine. Being scared is good in this class. It is, I swear to God. If you're not scared, then I've got a surprise for you. Okay, we're writing everything in C++. The other stuff we're doing is we're going to be reviewing other people's code. You can't learn to write very well without reading other people's stuff. So we'll read each other's code, right? Anonymously, so if something goes wrong, it won't be embarrassing. We'll have a midterm to see how well you're doing, and we will have a final exam. Now we'll talk more about these in just a few minutes. So, the other thing about this class is that it is deceptive. Okay? The material is deceptive. And here's the reason why. The stuff at the beginning of the semester is very easy. Very easy, relatively easy. And we spend a lot of time on it. We spend a lot of time on the easy stuff for a reason. And the reason is if you don't understand the easy stuff, then you're not going to be able to do very well with harder stuff later. It's like building the foundation of a building. Anybody ever watched a building be built? Have you ever seen that over time? What's the first thing they do when they build a building?
Build that foundation.
Yeah, and how much time does that take?
A lot of time.
Yeah, like 60 or 70% of the time spent in building is digging a hole and pouring the foundation. And once that's all done, the building just goes boing and like seems to pop up instantly. What happens if the building doesn't have a good foundation? Anybody know? This happens. So, so we spend a lot of time on the foundation up front. Am I scaring you too much? Maybe I should tone it down a little bit. It's going to be okay. I'm just trying to let you know what you're in for. Maybe I'm overdoing it. Okay? So if we were to graph how hard this course was over time, it seems to get a little harder, and there's a little bump around the midterm. And if you've just been kind of going along and doing what you're supposed to do, you have the feeling that it's going to, keep getting hard at the same rate. And what happens is after we get through the foundational material, which sadly is after the withdrawal deadline for this class, it gets harder. Okay? And so you really have to learn the foundation material well. I have honestly in the past, I've been fond of saying that the sooner you get behind, the more time you have to catch up. That does not work in this class. This class essentially is like having a steamroller going slowly down the road that you have to stay in front of, not fall behind. Okay? All right. Yes, sir.
Is that based on student responses? Or?
No, this is like totally made that up. So, but if you find any student who's taken this class and show them the graph, I am confident that they would agree with it. Okay. All right, so here's the problem, right? You get lulled into the sense of security that it's, you're tracking, and then all of a sudden it gets harder. And you know what that is?
It's a trap.
All right. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to go through the semester. We're going to do the first two projects in the midterm. And some of you in the class will probably not have the foundational material we need down. And you will get an email from me, and I will suggest that you come to my office and talk to me and your dean about withdrawing from the file. Okay? Now, I'm not saying this because I want that to happen. I'm not saying this because this is a weed out course. I would like for every single one of you to succeed. I would like for every single one of you to get an A in this course. But you have to earn it. You can't just give it to you. The thing about computer science and the thing about programming is it's very cut and dried. Your program meets the requirements. Your program doesn't meet the requirements. Right? It's not, you can't come to me and go, well, my interpretation of the symbolism of using a vector here is such that, and I'll go, there's no symbolism. It just didn't work. Right? So it's pretty objective how the grading works. So if I come to you partway through the semester and I say, you need to think about withdrawing, I mean it. But I don't want that to happen. I really don't. I don't like doing that. I want everybody to succeed. Only reason I'm standing up here teaching this class is because I like teaching it. I like teaching computer science. I like having you all learn it. I just don't want you to get caught in the trap at the end of the semester. Okay? Everybody with me? So let's talk about why, given that this is a hard class, you should take it. Right. There's a bunch of reasons. But, all right, so how many are you here because it's a major requirement and your dean is making you take the course? Anybody? A few? That's a fine reason. How many of you are here because your parents are making you take the course? A couple of you? Your parents love you. That's great. They want you to be happy. How many are you here because, it's some sort of court-ordered thing? Anybody? No? Never? How many of you are here just because you're curious? Awesome. I'm glad. I think you're going to get a lot out of this class. All right, how many of you are here because you want a job someday? That is a fantastic reason to want to take this class. I will tell you, the people who major in computer science in our class, typically something like 85 or 90% of the class have jobs by October or November of their senior year. So there is a large demand. How many of you all think you might want to do a startup and get incredibly rich? Come on. You can admit it. It's okay. Let's talk about that. Programming can make you rich. It absolutely can. You can get a job. There is a huge demand for people who understand programming and who understand computer science. Okay. And there is the possibility that you can go out and do something fantastic with it. There are a lot of people who learned to program who went out and did amazing things. Let's talk about some of them. Who's that? Is he a programmer? No, he's a loser. He was not a programmer. He did like calligraphy or something like that. How about this guy? Who's that? Programmer? No, he's some sort of business guy. He's a loser. All right, how about this guy? Okay, winner or loser? Absolutely. Bill Gates got rich through programming. How about this lady? Anybody? Who's this? Yes, Marissa Mayer, Yahoo CEO, winner or loser? She's a winner. She has a computer science degree from Stanford University. And we all know this guy, CEO of Facebook. He's clearly a winner, right?
He's Jesse Eisenberg.
Oh, sorry. Jesse Eisenberg's a loser. He doesn't know how to program. But this guy programs really well. Okay. So I mean, you know, joking aside, it's a good area to be in, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I don't expect you to go out and make startups and like be incredibly rich. If you do, please consider me for your board of advisors. We're forming the company, but you know, you don't have to do that. But even if you don't do a startup, it's a good place to get a job. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about beyond jobs, what you can do with it. All right, so what am I doing here? I know how to program, and you know, clearly I'm not doing that well. Like I said, I'm here because I'm a computer geek, and I think computers are absolutely amazingly incredible. I think they are the most powerful tool humans have ever invented. And I just like sharing it with people. There are days in this class, and I'll tell you after they happen, where there are things that I teach you, and once in a while someone's face would just go, oh, and I just go, that was the moment that I'm teaching for. It makes me happy. So computers are amazing tools, and if we think about it, is a computer a tool? Yeah, it is. Most tools we use are for physical things, right? Like shovels and hammers and that thing. And, oh my God, I don't know what you do with that. Oh, there we go, something we all use, and ShamWow, right? These are all tools that affect our physical world. They are tools that let us manipulate our environment. But a computer is a very unique tool. It's different from all these others because it's not a computer, it's not a tool that allows us to manipulate our environment. It is a tool for our mind. It makes us remember things better. It makes us think faster. It makes us able to instantly communicate with anyone in the world. It's amazing. It is a tool for our mind. And even though I called Stephen Jobs a loser back there, I was joking, be a state of Steve Jobs, he actually said something once that amazed me.
I think one of the things that really separates us from the high primates is that we're tool builders. And I read a study that measured the efficiency of locomotion for various species on the planet. The condor used the least energy to move a kilometer. And humans came in with a rather unimpressive showing about a third of the way down the list. It was not too proud of a showing for the crown of creation. So that didn't look so good, but then somebody at Scientific American had the insight to test the efficiency of locomotion for a man on a bicycle. And a man on a bicycle, or a human on a bicycle, blew the condor away, completely off the top of the charts. And that's what a computer is to me. What a computer is to me is, it's the most remarkable tool that we've ever come up with. And it's the equivalent of a bicycle for our minds.
So, I completely agree with that. I wish I'd said it myself first, but you know. Anyway, so here's our problem. The computer is a tool for our mind. How many of you all think your mind works just like everybody else's mind? You haven't met my stepfather. Oh my God, I'm going to put that on the internet. Take that off. Okay, note to self. There are people who do, but for most of us, our minds work differently. If the computer is a tool for your mind, do you think the programmers at Apple or Google or Microsoft had your mind in mind when they wrote the program? They didn't. It's a tool for your mind, but your mind works differently than everyone else's. And so, how many of you have ever been annoyed by the way your computer works? Anybody? Has ever done something you don't like? Does Microsoft Word still do this? Remember this thing? It looks like you're writing a letter. Or the takeoff of it, it looks like you're trying to get some work done. Would you like me to bug you? No, it just pop up later when I'm in the middle of my presentation. So, it's annoying when programs don't do what you want. They do what other people thought you would like, isn't it? So, what we really want is computers that do what I want, not what other people thought I wanted. So you know what this class is about? This class is your first step to bending the computer to your will. So the computer will work the way you want it to, rather than the way that some programmer in Silicon Valley thought you wanted it to. It's a way of harnessing this incredible tool to solve your problems, rather than the problems other people thought you had. So, really, this class it's about power. If the computer is the most powerful tool we've ever had, and I believe it, then this is about you harnessing that power. And really, I want to title this class Power Through Computer Science 1, but I don't think they'll let me. So, all right. Now, there's a difference. You might be perfectly happy just using tools other people created for you. I do sometimes. I don't write my own video games. I'm perfectly happy playing the ones other people write, because they can be fun. But, and so you might just be perfectly happy using the tools other people provide for you. Why not? Why not? It can be much easier, a lot less effort. But to me, it's the difference between seeing an animal, in a zoo and going on a safari. So let's say you wanted to see a cheetah. We could go and we could find a place that had a cheetah, and it was stuffed and mounted, and we could look at it. And that is the equivalent of just using code people have written for you. Or you could go on an adventure. And you could go on the adventure of writing your own code. And this is like going on a safari. And there's no telling what will happen on the safari.
It's going to come right through the roof.
All right. So, by the way, I don't know if you've noticed, I'm fond of really bizarre analogies. So the difference between not taking this course and not learning to program is the difference between being reliant on this experience that other people have come up with you, or going on an adventure of your own. And things can definitely go wrong when you're on an adventure on your own. So, if you were going to get into computer science, if you were to take this class, if you were to continue on, say you enjoyed it, and despite the fact that this class is a challenge, many people do, say you were to continue on, what could you do with the knowledge that you have? We talked about getting a job and doing a startup, but there's a lot of other stuff, right? Everything in the world these days, everything is connected to computer. Everything is computer. And having knowledge of how that works gives you power in whatever you choose to do. Even if you were to choose not to take computer science, anybody thinking of majoring in something else, or already majoring in something else? Shout it out. What you got? R. Do you know R?
Yes.
Well, that's fine. Once you learn how to program, R will be easier for you. You will understand. You will be able to use the tool of the computer to do math. Who else has a major? Yes? Oh my gosh, have you heard of computational linguistics? It's a whole area. You can do work over huge bodies of language to learn from them and use the computer to do all the boring, grinding work for you. Who else? Sir? So that is out of my area, but I understand that people are doing a lot of stuff with like modeling of molecules and forces, and, covalent bonds. I don't know if you've already seen anything. All right, something else that's easier for me to draw an analogy to. Yes?
International economics.
Oh my God, economics? Everything in economics these days is modeling. Almost all the modeling is done on the computer. And it's normally done in a bizarre ancient language that your economics professor knows that's good from like 20 years ago. But once you learn a language like this, it is much easier to learn other languages. In fact, I don't even really claim to know a lot of different languages because I don't. I have to look a lot of stuff up when I'm programming. But because I understand the underlying concepts, I know what to look up. All right, so the basic idea of this is you can do anything you want. That the computer is just a tool that will solve your problems. And whatever you choose to do, I chose to like make the computer do more stuff, because that's what I enjoy. But whatever you choose to do, you can do anything you want. And in fact, you're going to find, I think, throughout the semester, is that even though it's challenging, programming, building a program is really an act of creating something. And it's tremendous fun. It's really fun. Now, I've told you, I've scared you about how much you have to learn, but let me tell you the good part. The good part is when you actually sit down and you work on your program for a while and everything works, it's wonderful. You're like, wow, I just built this thing that does something really cool. It's amazing. People really like that, I can tell you. And then, once you know how to do that, you can make the world better in any way that you choose to. Right? You don't have to get a job or do a startup. You can apply your knowledge to all sorts of problems and bring this amazing tool to bear on. Now, one of the things I've learned over the many years that I've been teaching is that I can talk much longer than you can listen. So what I'd like to do is break up the class every once in a while just by having you stand up in place. So let's try it right now and see what you like. Stand up. Sure. We'll just take a break for 1 minute. All right, you can sit down again. You don't have to keep sitting. So let's say that I haven't scared you away yet by my proclamations of doom, doom. In order to get to the point where you can use this amazing knowledge that you're going to acquire in this class, you have to get through the class. And I've told you the class is hard, haven't I? But I haven't told you yet how to successfully get through it. That's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to tell you what you need to know to pass this course. How's that sound? All right. The first step in passing this course is to not fail the course. By definition, if you don't fail, you're going to pass. So let me just talk about what you can do to fail the course. Okay? So just so we're clear, I'm not talking about how to pass the course right now. Don't write this down. I'm talking about how to fail the course. So the first thing you can do to fail the course is skip assignments. Oh, that went fast. Skip assignments, particularly assignment 2. I'm going to talk about the syllabus in a few minutes, and what you're going to see is that there is something due every single week. Almost every single week this semester. Okay? Some of it is not worth very much in terms of your total grade. Some of it is worth only a minuscule percentage. And you might be tempted, oh, I'm busy. I've got a lot to do. I'm just going to skip this one. It actually turns out that even though it's not worth very much, there is so much to learn that even the small assignments are important. Okay? Particularly homework 2. That show up? It didn't, did it? Particularly homework 2. Homework 2 is going to be due in a couple of weeks. It's very simple. It just requires you to work with the editor and compiler, the tools that you use for everything else, and to make sure that you can use those successfully. People who skip this assignment almost always are the ones who depart by the withdrawal deadline. All right? So make sure you do homework 2, because what ends up happening is if you don't have practice using the tools, then later when you have to do the more advanced stuff, you spend all your time on the tools and you don't get anything done. All right, the other thing you can do to fail the course is start the programs at the last minute, like maybe 11:30 at night before it is due. The reason is because right now, you may know how long it takes you to write a paper, but you do not have any experience in how long it takes you to write a program. And what's going to happen is if you start at the last minute, you're going to run out of time. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time. I've seen it happen a lot. The next thing you can do to fail the class is not come to class. And if you're forced to be gone, don't get the notes, okay? There is a textbook for this class. It is optional. I didn't even bring it with me. It's a suggested book. It is not required. I'm going to give you every piece of information you need for this class in class. There are plenty of C++ books out there. There are tons of them. If you need a recommendation, I'm happy to give you extra stuff that you can look at. Different people learn different ways. Some people learn by watching other people do it, and I will do that in class. Some people learn by listening. Some people learn by doing, and some people learn by reading. If you're one of the people who learns best by reading, let me know and I will help you out. All right. How to pass the class? Well, we already talked about how not to fail, how to pass. And this is important, okay? I'm going to tell you how to pass this class in 3 easy steps. Step 1, start the projects early. Step 2, start the projects early. Step 3, start the projects early. Anybody see a common theme in there? You need to start the projects early. You're going to have about 2 weeks for each one. The early assignments, you're going to have 1 week to come up with like an outline, essentially, the equivalent of an outline, before you have to do the program. The reason you need to start the projects early is because you do not yet have the skills with the tools that you need to succeed. And what's going to happen is as you're working, you're going to get stuck on something. You're going to get stuck on something that's relatively simple. But because you don't have the experience yet dealing with the tools, it will be very difficult for you to solve. Okay? Here's how we fix that in this class. Instead of forcing you to bang your head against the desk for hours trying to figure something out, we have a lot of TAs lined up for this class. Right now we have 10 TAs lined up for this class. They will have somewhere around 2 to 3 hours of office hours a week. So there will be plenty of people sitting around where you can go to them and ask them questions. And for the TAs, most of whom are undergraduates, many are just a year or so ahead of you, they have enough experience working with the tools that they can solve your problem relatively easily. All right? They can do it in like minutes versus the hours it would take you. And minutes is much shorter than hours. So if you start early, you can work until you get stuck. You can say, oh, I'm stuck. I can't figure this out. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop working on it. I'm going to use some time for other classes so I can get something productive done, and then I'm going to stop by the TA and help them get me unstuck. Okay. Now, can you do that if you start at 11:30 the night before? Not very well. You need to start early to get help early, and if you're done early, you can taunt your classmates. That is respectable. Okay. So everybody repeat after me. Start the projects early.
Start the projects early.
Just out of curiosity, did anybody read like the Rate My Professor comments from me? No?
Yes.
And what did they say? Okay, voice of wisdom. Yeah, it's in there, okay? All right. You need to start the projects early so you can get help. It used to be that I would answer emails at 2:30 in the morning, the night before a project was due. I thought it was fun. I would actually try to answer them so that they had the same minute on the timestamp if they came in. Because that was wild for students to like ask a question and then like 10 seconds later, like, oh my God. But now I have children and I go to bed at like 10 o'clock. So I can just tell you it's not happening that I'm answering anything at 2:30 in the morning. All right. Let me pause for a minute and ask questions. And before I ask, let me point out something. When people did a study of classrooms and how students and professors interact in the classroom, they found that even if people had a question, they would typically wait 17 seconds after the professor asked if anybody had a question to ask their question. Okay? So, in this class, you don't have to do that. So we can wait our 17 seconds now. All right, that's the only time this semester I'm going to wait 17 seconds. If you have a question, this is your class. Somebody is paying for this, and I'm getting a small portion of that money. Okay? So you're paying for this class, you're paying to be here, you're paying for me to answer your question. So let's go ahead. Questions? Yes, sir.
I've had a little experience working with Java. How's easier to translate that knowledge?
I will address your concern in just a moment. Other question? Yes?
Mac or PC doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Mac or PC doesn't matter. Yes?
we bring a computer to class?
If you want, you don't need to program on it while you're in class. But it's up to you. I actually suggest taking notes on paper because there will be times that I'm doing diagrams and it's actually a lot easier to like just draw the diagrams freehand. If you're using like a tablet, you might be able to draw it. Yes, sir.
For the exams, are we coding on paper or computer?
It will be paper-based exams in class. And I will, here's what I'm going to do, actually. Before I give you any exam, I'm going to give you a list of topics, and I will only take questions off that list of topics. So in order to make the exam fair, I'm not just going to be like, write a distributed, multi-massively on flying player, casino thing. I'm going to be like, here are the topics you need to know. The exams are, they can be hard, but I believe they're fair. You have to ask the other students who took them if they agree with me. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Will we be graded on how well commented our program?
Okay, I will talk about programming in just a moment, but yes, in part. I will give you a preview of coming attraction. The program is a way to tell the computer to do something. It is also a way to tell another human what you wanted the computer to do. So when you write code, we're not just writing code that programs well, that does the program well, we're also writing code that works well for other people to read. Yes, sir?
Is there a specific IDE you want us to use, or you just want the C++ files?
We will talk about that when the time comes. And if you didn't understand what he said, that's fine. You will learn, I guarantee. All right. Any questions? Okay, so perhaps that last question frightened you a little bit. How many of you all in here are a little bit scared? Still scared? Yeah. So, and when you hear people who ask questions, right, like they've programmed before, that might frighten you a little because you're like, oh my God, this is a hard class. I'm in the class with people who already know how to program, so nobody actually looks like this. This is the mental image you might have of like people who have programmed a lot. And I want to tell you something. Your fears of not getting a good grade are completely rational. They are absolutely completely rational, but they are wrong. They are absolutely wrong, okay? And let me show you this chart. Unlike the chart I created in the other with the little curve, this chart is actually taken from student grade distributions between people who can program and people who cannot, who had programming experience and people who did not. And here's what happens. If you have programming experience, your chance of getting an A is higher than somebody who has not had programming experience. However, your chance of getting a D and an F is also higher than somebody who does not have any programming experience. And you might be saying to yourself, that's bizarre. Anybody thinking that? That's bizarre. But it's true. And here's why. If you have programming experience and you come into this class, remember this chart, the one that I made up, and it looks really easy, and then it gets harder? Here's what happens to people who have programming experience. They come in here and they go, God, I know this. This is so boring. Yeah, I know this, know this, know this, know this. Oh, I'm so bored. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, what happened? And the class gets really hard and they are very far behind. If you have not programmed before, people tend to be much more studious and serious and do a good job keeping up. And in essence, if you haven't programmed before, we're going to teach you everything you need to know the right way. And you will have no bad habits to break. And you will not ever fall into this trap of thinking it's too easy until suddenly it becomes too hard. Okay? So, for those of you who have programmed before, I just want to warn you about something. It's a trap! Okay? And this has happened, I swear to God, people come to me and it's like week 12 of the class and they're like, I'm so far behind, I've just been skating along. All right. And so here's what happens by analogy. Let's say I was teaching you to do plumbing. Okay? Anybody know how to do plumbing? I don't. My wife won't let me anymore. But let's say I was teaching you to plumbing and I wanted to say, okay, we're going to plumb two sinks together. Right? And I teach you about, oh, you need a T-joint and a bend here. Do you want one of these little flexy things? And you can do a single trap for both. Right? How many of y'all think that looks like a nice thing? It does. And I would teach you all the pieces. Now, by analogy, the people who already know how to program may not know about all these different pieces. They probably don't. But they have some collection of things they do. So I give them a project and I say, put two sinks together. And what happens is they come up with something like this. And literally, I come in and I look and I go, well, there's the trap. And I can sort of see why you'd use a milk jug here, but why is there a doorknob? And they'll say, oh, you know, I learned about doorknobs a long time ago, and I got really stuck in the project, and so I didn't really look at what you just did. I just used the doorknob because I knew how to do it. And I'll be like, you fail, you know? I mean, that's not what we were teaching. So, if you are worried about other people having programming experience, it is a rational fear, but it is not actually what turns out to happen. Okay? Does that make sense? It just doesn't work that way, for whatever reason. Okay. One other thing you need to know, statistically in this class, women do better than men. It's been shown over a long period of time to be true. They do better on the midterms, they do better on the exams, they do better on the projects, on average. Okay, not to frighten anyone. All right, so that's mostly the end of me rambling. Let me just show you what you're in for. This isn't funny now. I will show you this again as a senior at the end of your computer science career, and you will laugh hilariously at it. All right, so that's the end of my introduction to the class. Okay? I really want you to be in here. I really want you to succeed. I want you to do well. It's hard. It's not hard in the sense that it's impossible to do. It's just a challenge. You need to start early. You need to keep up. That's the secret to success. And I'm psyched you all here. I'm very psyched. I love teaching this class. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot more fun. Other questions? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over the syllabus briefly, if you don't mind passing this thing around. And we'll just talk about what's on it and what we're going to do over the course of the semester. By the way, who did I terrify away? Anybody? I wasn't trying to scare you away. If you feel that you're scared away, I made a mistake. Nobody? Nobody's who did it? Pass it back. And when they get to the back, if you can pass them towards this way, because probably has some. Anybody have extras? Can you pass them up this way? Pass them forward? Pass them up forward? Coming forward, so this is coming forward, look back. Thank you. 5. All right. All right. Yeah, sure. It's my personal copy. All right, so this is Computer Science 1. The description of the course lists a lot of stuff that we're going to do. Doesn't matter to you right now because in order to explain everything on there, it would take all semester. So we'll just do that over the course of the semester. If I have unfortunately intimidated you into thinking that this course might be a little bit too much work for you, there are other ways to learn programming. There's a course called COSC-051 An Introduction to Computer Science through Ruby, which is a little bit less demanding. This course is intended to prepare people for the major. And this actually is probably the hardest course in the computer science curriculum. And again, it's not hard because the material is crazy. It's hard just because there's a lot to do, a lot to cover. Okay. There is a textbook. It's recommended and not required. I asked for the 7th edition. However, the 8th edition was available, so that's what they have in the bookstore. If you want to go online and find an older edition, that's fine. If you don't want that book at all, I can recommend some that are available online for free. I have no clue. They get paid more for the 8th edition. I think is the difference. They rearrange the chapters. So that's what happens with that. All right, so assignments. If you look here, every due date for the semester is on this one page. Okay? Everything you need to know. The assignments are going to be posted on my webpage. Most of them will be submitted through Blackboard. Okay? And we use Blackboard's online grading to submit them. There is a homework due next week. It's actually posted. I would recommend you not really start it until after class next time because I will talk more about the topic. Okay. You can look ahead if you want to see what we're talking about, but I recommend you not start it. All right. Midterm, October 24th. Final, I believe it's December 18th. However, I have put this on the syllabus before, and then the final exam is changed out underneath me, and I've gone to the wrong place. So here's my warning. If you find the final exam does not agree with the syllabus, let me know, because I'm almost certainly wrong. Okay? All right, if you turn it over, policies for this course. I do not take course attendance. I'm not going to check down whether you're here or not every day. It is to your advantage to be here. The best way to get the material is to attend. Okay? That being said, I have a policy, which is if attendance falls below 50%, I will have a pop quiz. And it will be the easiest pop quiz that the people who are here have ever taken in their entire life. Okay? Just to encourage people to come. It's never happened in this class. It's never happened in 051. It's happened in some of my upper level classes. You're responsible for keeping backups of your projects. We are going to give you a machine to do some work on. And I'll talk about that later. That machine is not regularly backed up. Okay? So you're responsible for backing up your stuff. If you want to talk to me about backup stuff, I can help you find backups. People generally do backups very poorly. I came close to losing all my data once, and I am now an insane backup fanatic. You must take the final exam with your section. Okay? It's a kind of late exam this year. You may not just, skip it because you want to go home early. If you have a cell phone, and I imagine most of you do, if your cell phone rings and disrupts the class, I reserve the right to answer it. If your phone rings and I answer it and the call is for me, I get to keep your phone. And that's because I used to have only the first rule, and then some of my fun students snuck out and called and then asked for me, and it freaked me out. It was great. But they're actually trying to find my mom's phone number so that my mom would call one of their phones, and when I answered, it was my mom. But they couldn't find my mom's phone number. That would have just made me so happy. Okay. Due dates. You have all the due dates on front of you in the sheet. They're actually also on the web page, which I think I put on the front here. Yeah, I post all the assignments on the web page, on my web page, just because it's easier for me and then I keep a record of it. So all the due dates are on there as well. They tend not to change unless something happens, like we have a snow day, which doesn't really happen in the fall. So it's your job to get the assignment in on time. I'm actually generally pretty flexible. If you know that you're going to have a conflict with one of the due dates, like you have, off-campus interview, I guess most of your first years that's not going to happen, or a sporting event, or some reason that you have to be gone. If you ask me in enough time, like ahead of time, like a week before, it's generally not going to be a problem. If you ask me like the night before, it's generally going to be a problem. Okay? So if you know you have a conflict and you have all the dates, tell me in advance and we will work stuff out. If things are late, the policy is 4% off the total grade for every hour it is late, which means after about a day, it's not worth very much anymore. Okay? And the reason we do that is because we have to get stuff out to the TAs to get graded so that we can get it back to you so you can get feedback before the next assignment. And if your assignment's very late, it's not possible to do that. All right, let's talk about academic honesty here. I like having a really collegial and open classroom. I like it when you know each other. I like it when you see each other outside. I will mention in passing that I know of 3 marriages that have come from students who have met in 051. Okay? I worked out the odds, and that works out over the population of the course about a 2% chance of marrying somebody who's in this classroom with you right now. All right? So oddly enough. So I like things being collegial. That being said, I have this policy. And it comes down to this. You can talk about problems with each other, but you cannot see each other's code. Okay? And I'm quite serious about this. When you go out in the world and you're programming, you will be programming, assuming you do that, you don't have to, but if you ever go out in the world and you're programming and you end up at Amazon or Google or someplace like this, there is not just one person sitting down doing all the programming by themselves. People program in teams. And so people ask me, hey, given that out in the real world people program in teams, why don't we do that here? My answer is, when you're learning basketball or learning a sport, do you work on the team stuff first or do you work on your individual skills first? Absolutely. In order to be a good part of the team, you have to bring your individual skills to bear. This class is the class that teaches you your individual skills. And if you end up working with other people, and other people have better individual skills than you do, it will carry you along and you will not learn as much. So, you can sit down, you can talk about the problem, you can talk about your solution to it. You cannot look at each other's code. You cannot look at other people's code, they cannot look at your code. If you get stuck and you have a code problem, there's plenty of TAs. TAs are allowed to see your code. I have office hours. You can come see me. I will look at your code. Later in the semester, I will also tell you how to ask me questions by email. And I often will help people with code by email. So that's possible too. So here's what you can do. You can draw pictures on a whiteboard about your solution. If you have a problem with a particular piece of code, and I'll talk about this later, you can write a separate program together that uses that technique to see how it works. And then once you've done that, you can work on your code by yourself. But you cannot show each other's code. Everybody clear on that? Now I'm going to let you know that when your stuff gets turned in, there's a program called MOS, which means Measure of Software Similarity. And it compares all your code against everybody else's code in the class, and it points out the similarity. And it works very well. Okay? And the reason I don't want you to look at each other's code is because MOS, if you copy code, we'll see it, and then we have to do the whole honor thing, and that is not good for anybody. Not good for anybody. So your code is your own. Protect it. Don't show it to anyone else. Now, in terms of resources online, there's a lot of stuff out there about C++. You can use textbooks. You can use online C++ references. The very best reference for the project in this class are the solutions that I have posted in past semesters. You are allowed to use those. Okay? If you go online and you find code that you want to use in your project, you must cite it, just like you would cite something in a paper. And when you learn about code, there's a way using comments to insert little notes to other people. So if you find code somewhere online, you can use it. However, there's a variety of C++ programming styles, and the one that we teach you is tries to be explicitly clear and simple. So the stuff that you find may not match what we do in the class. All right, all your students' work is your own. You can't plagiarize. I'm using MOS. Okay, let me just tell you, I report everything to the Honor Council. I don't like doing that, I really don't, but I believe it's the right thing to do. And here is why. A long time ago, when I got out of graduate school, I was teaching at Purdue University in Indiana. And I was given a class to teach that had been taught many times before in the past. It was kind of like a service class. And it had a very big population. So I ran the class, I used the same projects, everything like that. And what happened is towards the end of the semester, a student came in to visit me. And this was a student who had won a special national scholarship from his country, which we will just refer to as Remotistan. Okay? He came from Remotistan, and it was a very impoverished poor country. And he won this national scholarship to come to Purdue and study. The thing is that he had to maintain a B average in order not to be put on probation at Purdue, because that was the standard for graduate students. He had to not be on probation to keep his visa. So if he got below a B, his visa would be revoked and he would have to go home. And this would clearly be a pretty terrible thing. So towards the end of the semester, he came to see me and he said, I'm not getting a B. I'm just not doing really well. And I looked at his stuff and I was like, yeah, your grades just don't quite merit that. Your stuff doesn't work as well. And then it came towards the end of the semester and he wasn't going to get a B, and I felt bad, but he just didn't do as well as someone else. But one of the graduate students came to me and said, hey, people are cheating in your class. And I was like, what? I was new, I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't using MOS at the time. And so I went and looked, and I ran MOS on the code, and sure enough, there was a large group of students who were cheating. And they were sharing code with each other, they were sharing code from people who had taken the class before. Once I took all those people out of the grade distribution, this student, whose essentially academic life was about to be ruined, wasn't getting a B. He was getting like an A-. He was doing fine. It was just that because people were cheating, they made him look worse when he was being honest. So ever since that day, I have been quite careful to keep an eye out for cases of academic dishonesty. And if it happens, I will report you to the Honor Council. I don't want to. I really don't want to deal with that. I'm just telling you right up front. Most of you are going to be honest and you're going to do your own work. There are some of you who may not be honest, and I'm warning you, I'm not to get you. Not because I hate you, but for the good of everybody else in the class. And there's some of you here who are probably honest most all the time, but put in a situation where things are very stressful, where you have a lot of work to do and you have a deadline, you might be tempted to be dishonest. If you find yourself in that situation, don't do it. Send me an email, call me, come see me. We will work something out. Okay? Is that clear? I was in school a really long time. And I know that it gets stressful. And if it ever gets really stressful for you, come tell me, and we will work something out. Okay? Don't be stupid and do something that's dishonest. Okay? Everybody clear about that? That's why I'm keen on this, and that's why I do it, because I want to make sure that people who are being honest are actually